What's up, everybody? David Yakir here for Yak About Today, hoping you are better, healthier, and more informed than any generation that came before. So if the years 46 to 64 mean something to you, then this is the place you want to be. Now put your headphones on, go for a run, and listen to what we yak about today. Hey, it is David, and I really want to thank you for listening. So I've been thinking, as usual. So I've been thinking about a conversation we had at dinner last night, which consisted of Bill's New England-style chicken soup, traditional butterleaf salad with arugula and a balsamic dressing, and I know this will make my guest crazy, but we had butter pecan ice cream cones for dessert. Well, so listen to this. Somehow the conversation went to the Beatles, and it was the period where the Beatles traveled to the Maharishi Yogi to find enlightenment. And I think for most of us, it might have been the first time we ever heard the words Buddhist, meditation, and for that matter, yoga, which some of us practice to this day. So when we were talking, everybody was sort of throwing out different ideas, different things they had learned. And we sort of came to the conclusion that somehow there seemed to be many different ways to get to enlightenment, or some people call it peace of mind, or finding your center, or whatever you call it. So there's one person that I've been following recently. His name is Dr. Mark Belt. Now, listen to this story because I think it's interesting. He was an ER doctor, and I believe it was South Carolina, and he'll tell me if I'm wrong in a minute. And in about 2014, he went on this quest to understand comprehensive well-being. He created a wellness and fitness program, and when he practiced it, he noticed that it brought many positive changes to people's lives. And by helping the mind, well, actually, let me do it a different way. He says by helping the mind to get out of its head, the body follows and great things begin to happen. And that's something in a bit I'm going to ask him to really explain further. So the interesting thing is how he pursued, his knowledge. He went in and he researched math, biochemistry. He studied the subconscious mind and mental suffering. And he recognized that the mind is the key to unlocking the potential of the body. So this exploration and research inspired him, right? He started documenting the transformations enjoyed by the people he helped. So he's got a new book coming out, and we'll talk about that in a second, but he has developed a series of courses and sessions to help others heal and achieve complete well-being. His aim is to help each individual, first, to live to their full potential as a human being. So I'm hoping that he's going to do this for us, and I've got him here in the studio, which I really love. So you don't have to put up with a phone call or remote connection, which many of you sort of complain about every once in a while. So, Dr. Mark Belt, welcome.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today.
So, what I always do with the audience? I always sort of talk to them and tell them who the person is that I'm talking to. Right. What is this? I gave them, I always give the opening where I try to explain who you are, what you're doing, that type of thing. But it's always good that they hear, you had a starting point, you had a life, and all of a sudden you started moving forward into developing these programs. And why?
Well, David, I was reached a point in my life where I became mentally and physically burnt out. And through those circumstances, I went searching to find out what was my full potential. What did it mean to be completely well and kind of running on all cylinders? And I thought that most of it would happen from the experience or the physical experience. And I knew that the mind was involved somehow, but I had really never paid it much attention. But as I went further and studied and researched, I found out that the mind was really the key to all well-being. And ultimately that all well-being starts and it ends in the mind.
So, one of the questions when I was sort of talking about you to, my friends and acquaintances, usually, as everybody knows, at dinner parties, um, I think all of this from as I said in the opening, from the Beatles visiting the Maharishi, all the way through current day, there are self-help books. People are putting out programs. My therapist is teaching me how to find my center. So I know that there are programs for everybody, and some people take to some. And what I thought was interesting is how you brought these programs together. In other words, you recognize the work of other people, I think, and other programs, and then you took it in a certain direction. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. I started looking at why meditation works in this culture or philosophy, why thousands of years ago, Buddhism started to work, and then Taoism and yogis and religions. Why do some religions work? What was common between all these philosophies and religions and individuals who seemed to be able to understand the mind, create something wonderful, something genius, but really couldn't hold it every day for the rest of their lives. And I just searched for what was in common that made all these programs work. And so as I studied more and more and learned, I was a biology major in college, so I was always interested in biology, chemistry. And what I found that there was a common thread and a way that this all worked, and that was math and chemistry. And so I searched more and more into that and found an answer.
I want to step back for a second because there was something I wanted to actually ask you at the beginning. Was there anything about being an ER doctor, that inspired this next move, this growth that you've undergone? Because are we talking two different things that are not connected? Is the experience in the ER and patients' trauma, whatever they're going through, did that lead you to sort of going in a certain direction?
Yeah, I think it did, because as an ER physician, basically what you see is just suffering every day. If it's legitimate and people are there for a real medical or mental problem, you see suffering. And like, I put it this way, what if I could help a guy with a heart attack and he's 60 and he could go on for 20 more years and live with his family, enjoy his grandchildren? Where does he feel well? It's not just in the body, he feels well in his mind. So I just looked at all the suffering in the past that I had seen, and a lot of psychiatric problems and mental suffering, and then thought, with what I was learning, how can that be prevented? We know the physical disease can be prevented 70 to 80% of the time, even up to 90%. But how do you prevent mental suffering? If I was able to come up with a way, a common thread or a system that people could use every day, that I started to use and find out, and it really started to help me, is there a way to prevent all that mental and ultimately physical suffering as well?
I do have one question related to that. And I know we're going to get to the programs, I promise you. Did you notice that people who, have life and death situations and they make it past, that trauma or life experience, do they change?
Well, I don't think it's a complete black and white. They change for the good, they change for the bad, this happens, that happens. I remember one case that was really interesting, that really struck a chord with me. A guy came in, he was about 30 years old, and he was coming in for a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. And apparently he tried to commit suicide, and he failed. And so I went over, and all the nurses were gathered around. I pulled the bandages back, and the guy attempted to put a shotgun in his mouth and end his life. But with the kick of the gun, it came out. He failed to kill himself, but he did manage to blow his face off. And then I started to look at his limbs, and he had already had loss of his hands and feet. So I talked to him more and more. And what had happened is when he was 17, he decided to kill himself by jumping on electrical wires outside. And because of that, he lost his hands and his feet. And the reason he had done that is because he was depressed over some family situation with his mom and his parents separating, divorcing, and from that, he had always been depressed because of his past, for something in his mind that he was suffering. Then come forward 15 years later, and he's still depressed. He still wants to kill himself. So he tries again. So here you have a guy, because of his past experiences, because of his subconscious mind, after the first suicide attempt, you'd think, okay, something great had happened in my mind, and now I'm going to go live life. But you just can't predict what happens. Here, this guy was suicidal again. But he still had a chance after this to come out of it, to retrain his subconscious mind. So I was thinking, how can I help somebody like that? And what I found is that you can reprogram the subconscious mind at any point in life, irregardless of your past. Doesn't matter how you were hurt, rejected, failed, lost, trauma. And we all have that. We all have times where we've been rejected in our early life, in our families, or bullied, or even told just we would never, amount to things. And so we carry that the rest of our lives, but that can be changed.
And that something like that is part of how you develop these programs. We're going to take a break, right? But we are going to talk about the programs when we get back.
Great.
I'm David Yakir. You're listening to Yak About Today, and we'll see you on the other side. I want to take a moment to talk to you about New Vision Eye Center. For the last couple of years, they've been a sponsor of this show, and I couldn't be prouder. I've met so many people that have walked up to me and thanked me for recommending them. I hear all sorts of stories about how they've worked miracles. And as you know, I've been a patient of New Vision Eye Center for years. So when I say go see Dr. Minotti, Reinauer, Tate, and O'Brien, it's because I wouldn't trust my eyes to anyone else. All right, this is David Yakir. You're listening to Yak About Today, and I've got Dr. Mark Belt. And I thought we'd continue the conversation. You've developed a set of programs now, and you're calling them, I believe, the ABCs of wellness.
Well-being.
Well-being. Yes. Sorry about that. I did have it right in front of me, but I failed to look. So anyway, and it's a series of, is it a series of lectures or is it a program? Tell us about it.
Well, the whole program is called the ABCs of Well-being. And what it is a system that you can do daily. That's easy, that's effective, that's lasting. And each letter of the alphabet has a certain mind-body step that you do. And each action has a scientific study behind it. So by doing these actions, you will actually increase the right neurotransmitters and chemicals in your brain that make your mind fertile to be able to be reprogrammed. And through these 26 steps, because of the input that's mathematically healthy for your body and all the five senses, you can reprogram your subconscious mind. By doing that, you then won't inhibit your conscious mind. So then you won't have any negative doubt, worry, fear. Your mind and body will be running optimally, and then you'll be more conscious, so then you'll be more creative and aware in life.
Okay, so, when I was reading the draft of your book, that'll be out soon, let me see if I can articulate in the most simple way. I'm a simplistic person. I hate doing this to you, but you state, and I guess it's well known and well researched, that there are certain years when we were young where we are programmed. It's when we are most susceptible to programming, and it's not necessarily meant to be bad programming or good programming. It's something has taken place for those years that stay with us forever. And if I'm right, much of the time that becomes baggage that we carry with us. So the idea is, and tell me if I'm wrong here, if that baggage sometimes so consumes us that we can't operate in the here and now. And I think what I read is you divide it between the subconscious, our original programming, and the conscious, which is how I guess we're operating today or want to operate today. Or I'm not exactly sure. Take me through it.
Well, yeah, what I've learned is that the mind is comprised of the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. And 95% of the way we think, decide, and behave is due to our subconscious mind. 95%. And so basically, it's a robot. The way we sit, the way we think, our emotions, and the way that's programmed is early in our childhood by age 1 to 7. So our experiences, what we see, hear, feel, our emotions, smell, and taste is programmed. We take it all in. We learn how to operate, and that's our operating system for the rest of our life. And it's by other experiences. Let's say you're 17 and you're looking for a relationship, but because of past things that happened before that, you have so much doubt, worry, and fear that you don't take that relationship to its fullest because of the past fear. So then that thought of fear is just reinforced then with further experiences. So then you get to age 30, 40, and 50, like I am, and 95% of what I do and am is all from my past, and most of the time it's negative. So then we can never live to our fullest potential because that negative subconscious mind inhibits our conscious mind. Our conscious mind is what we want to do, what we decide, what we're conscious of creating and being aware of. It's our free thinking and imaginative mind.
All right, so you've had a lot of experience implementing these programs, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes people, I think, subscribe to a series of programs. So on the one-to-one experiences of trying to implement your programs, maybe, without giving away who the person is or anything, maybe you can give us a story about what your perception of the person you were dealing with, how they were living, what were the difficulties and challenges, and how they evolved when you worked through, worked your program with them.
Yeah, I remember this one lady in particular, and just through life and, just the things that we go through, divorce, feeling bad about ourselves for many, many years, getting anxious and depressed. She would cry every day. And a lot of it just was her past way of thinking. She arrived at 48 years old and thinking in a certain way just because of the way that she was treated starting with childhood. So she shared some childhood experiences. She went through my program, and I used to do this program just one-on-one in person, but she actually did my video online program. And I wanted to see, would it work just as well if somebody just did it remotely by video? So she went through the program. And the first part of the program is some background and education about the mind, but then starting to do the letters A through Z. A stands for affirmation, B is breathing, C is to create a movie visualization of the future. Now, she only did this about a week, and she called me and said, Dr. Belt, this because of this video program, this has been the first time I haven't cried in 15 years. No tears, just because her mind started to work the way that it was designed. And so something so simple like that, just a phone call to let me know that this video that I made has completely changed your life just in a week. And now I just can't wait to see what else happens with her.
Okay, I know we're going to run short of time. There are two things I want to talk about here. One is I've looked at these videos and they're pretty great. Why don't you tell people how they can access, who you are, the website, and maybe sign up for the videos if they're interested?
Sure. My website is www.markbeltmd.com. And that will lead you to the video course. And on my website, it will explain more of the program, who I am, some sample videos of me working with special needs children, which is how I've learned how to develop this program because their minds completely work on math. And then if you're interested in going to the page describing the course directly, that's www.drmarkbelt.com, drmarkbelt.com.
All right. So you've agreed that you'll do a second show with me next week, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Because the most important story I really want to talk about next week is your work with special needs people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that one sort of tore my heart apart in a good way. And so I'm hoping next week we sort of can talk about that and tell everybody how you're really giving back to the community, because I think that's really important. And then we'll go over more specifically, the programs and how people can join the programs. So we're going to get you back next week.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to tell that story and how working with special needs children, autism, Down syndrome, actually helped me find this program, and how I've developed a whole therapy that is doing the same thing for them, just in a new language that I've helped to develop to be able to communicate with them.
All right. Thank you, Mark, or Dr. Mark, Dr. Belt. Which
Mark,
one do you like?
Mark, yeah.
All right. And for the listeners out there, if you heard a lot of squeaking, I need to oil these chairs. Sorry about that. Anyway, thanks again.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't.
Hey, once again, if you are new here and listening to one of the podcast networks that carry us, consider subscribing. And if you are listening to us via radio, put it on your calendar and listen every Monday at 3 p.m. on iHeartRadio's Waxy 107.9 FM, 1370 AM, or on Saturday evenings at 9:30 on Real Radio's 101.7. And remember, we can also be found online at yakabouttoday.com, and of course, you can write to us at yakabouttoday@gmail.com, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is David Yakir, and we'll yak with you next week, same time, same place. Peace.
Don't you give me no dirty looks. Your father's hip, he knows what cooks. Just tell your hula from outside. You ain't got time to take a ride. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Yakety yak.